This is part 2 of the How to Get Unstuck video. And this one is going to focus on how to get unstuck from your book, if you're stuck within your book. The first video was more focused on how to get unstuck if you are not moving forward physically, emotionally, or spiritually. That's what the first video is more about. And I talked a little bit about how they are actually tend to be connected, and why sometimes if we try to fix one and not the other, that's why we can tend to stay stuck in both or just not move forward the way that we want in either. So this one is all about how to get unstuck if you're not moving forward with your book. The first thing that I always recommend is to step away from the book, right? Sometimes we just need a break because we're in the trenches and we can't see the problems. So we need to just kind of step away, take a break, maybe do something else creatively to sort of clear that air, the space, and also fill our wells creatively in a different way. That often helps me. The next thing that you can do is read the book from the end to the beginning, if you've reached the end. Sometimes if you're like me, where I'll write the beginning, I might have the end, and I'm just missing some pieces in the middle, this will work really well because I have the ending, but there's areas in the middle that I just know that just aren't connecting well. Then I find if I read from the end to the beginning of the book, that just helps me look at it from a different perspective and really helps me to identify, oh, this is where it's not connecting. Now, if you haven't finished the end of the book, you can still read from where you've ended or where you're at to the beginning of the book. And I find that really helps to get you unstuck. The next thing is to map out major scenes. And I love doing this 2 ways, depending on how stuck I am or depending on how I need to look at the story overall. Sometimes I'll use a very detailed spreadsheet that lets me know like the chapter, the scene, who's in the scene, the major things that are happening in the scene, if anybody died in that scene, all the different details of each scene within each chapter, and I will put that all in a spreadsheet. So it kind of helps to get me to look at a big picture view. That's if I'm really struggling. I find that helps me to pinpoint a lot of plot, story, or character issues, or maybe that I haven't developed my character enough, or I'm got major plot holes and I can't figure out why, and that really helps me. Another way that I like to map out my story is to create a timeline, and this is more of, and it's not anything that's high tech. It's literally just a sheet of paper, and I do a line down the middle, and I basically identify, okay, chapter 1, this scene, quick, not even a sentence, just what happens in that scene and who's in the scene. And I just basically do that for the entire book, and I use as many sheets as I need to. And that's also just a quick way for me to just see how the story's flowing, and if it's not flowing, where are the gaps in the story. That really is a huge help. Those 2 things that I just mentioned really help me a lot when it comes to getting unstuck within a story. The next thing I like to do is read the story from the beginning to wherever you ended. And it's kind of similar to reading from the end to the beginning, but it's just you're doing it the opposite way. And what happens sometimes is if you have set the story aside and you haven't looked at it in a while, sometimes when you read it from the beginning, you will really see, okay, how you're looking at it from a reader perspective, and that can really help you to identify the issues that are in the story. And as writers, once we've identified the issues, that actually helps us to start writing again and fixing the problems that are part of the story. Sorry, my cat's in the background. They're loving the new house and exploring. So that is one way, because when you read from the beginning to wherever you ended. Like I said, it's almost like you're looking at it with fresh eyes rather than just trying to get out from where you're at in the story and you're really, really struggling. It can seem like a lot of work to go and read the whole thing through again, but the truth is, if you are really, really stuck, I find that this helps me to identify major story issues, plot holes, character issues. Maybe you think it's one thing and it actually turns out to be something else when you read it through. So that is another way that that can help you to get unstuck from your story. The other thing that I recommend is to read your story without editing. And I know this can be a real challenge, especially if you're one of those people where as you're reading, if you see something wrong, you have to edit it. Guilty. What I used to do is to actually print it out and read through the story. So, because once you're reading a printout, that temptation to change it while you're there in the computer is taken away, so that when you're reading it, you can focus on just reading it and just identifying the story issues. And what I do is I make notes on the side of the page where I want to make changes or where there are issues. I find that this really helps me to read the story also from a reader perspective, or maybe from an editor perspective, so that you're identifying, yeah, this isn't quite right, or that isn't quite right. And when you're reading it through that specifically, I find that it really helps you to identify where the issues are, whether they're with your story, your character, plot holes, settings, everything and anything. Maybe you need to do a little bit more research. This is a great way in order to read without editing, because sometimes when we're editing, we get lost in the weeds and we can't see the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest. I can never remember which way around that saying is. This is one thing that I really enjoy doing, is to look at reading content on the area that you're struggling with. Like, for instance, if you know that it's a character issue, is okay, what's a book, what is a book, a course, or something that I can do to take to help me to develop that area that I know that perhaps I'm not really great at, and that's why it's not working, to try to hone on that skill so that I can make my writing better. I recommend that anyway, but if there's a specific area that you're struggling with that is affecting your writing, then that is something that I do for myself and that I recommend that you do. Like, for instance, for me is dialogue. Oh my gosh. I'm horrible with dialogue, which is ironic because I'm such a talker, but I really struggle with dialogue of my characters. So I read a lot of books about dialogue. I like listening to conversations, which is helpful, but it's not always the most beneficial. So that is another way that can help you to get unstuck from your book. Next thing that you can do to help you to get unstuck is to use a checklist or a process to help you get out. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you're in the editing phase, I use my 4-step process for editing my book. So within each phrase, I have a checklist that takes me through each thing, each step that I need to take in order to edit the book. And this really helps me because sometimes I just read it through and then I forget, like, oh yeah, I need to make sure to check, not just my characters, but their tone. Do they all sound the same? All these little things that you don't think about that could be affecting the story and why it just feels off and you're not sure how to fix it. That is something that really helps me, is if there's a process for it or a checklist to make sure that I've gone through everything and that I haven't missed anything to do with either writing the book or perhaps editing the book, regardless of what phase you're in. That really helps me. If you're one of those people who get stuck in the middle, having a checklist to say, okay, when you're in the middle of the book, here are some things to think about to help you get through each act in the book, so that you're following I use the 3-part act but some writers use more than that, and that can be a way to help you to identify, oh, this is why I'm stuck, because I missed this step, or I didn't go into this step as much as I should have. So that is another way to help you get unstuck from your book. Another way is to gain feedback from others. Now that can mean from fellow writers, it can be from an editor, an expert, it can be from, just family and friends. It can be beta readers. I personally like to use beta readers, but I don't tend to use them until I'm completely finished. I try to work out the issues with my book on my own. However, if I'm really, really struggling, then I have my best friend that I will reach out to her and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can you look at it for me? I just can't seem to get out of it. And she will provide me with that feedback. So if you have that, I would definitely take advantage of that and utilize that as an option to help you to get unstuck. Is to hire a professional. And what I mean by that is there's editors that will edit your book, but a professional will be, I'm thinking more along the lines of oh my gosh, of course I can't remember the name right now. I think it's a developmental editor is one type. And basically what they will do is they will work with you to go through your story and just help you to not only develop the story, but help you to identify any issues. Some people use them if they're stuck. Some people use them if they finish the story to look at it, if it's a really, really rough draft. So that is an option if you have the budget for it. It's probably one of the most expensive ways to hire a writing professional, but if you have the budget for it, then I say go for it. Another way to help you to get unstuck is to take an online course or participate in a mastermind. And it depends on your learning style and the kind of support that you need to help you to get through whatever the difficulty is in your book. Because, for instance, an online course is one that might help guide you through writing a book from start to finish. And that might help you to be able to go through and say, okay, I need, when I'm writing the book, I'm doing it in these phases, and these are the things that I need to take into consideration. And then that will help you to get unstuck. A mastermind is more where you're participating in actually physically writing the book with other people. And then you're also getting feedback from them at the same time. So I know people who've done that. Very expensive, but like I said, if you've got the budget for it, that is an option, is to participate in a mastermind. That works well with businesses as well too. But I know writers that have done that. And what that looks like for them is, write your book in a weekend. That seems crazy to me, but I know writers who do it and it works great for them. They have that pressure, they have that support, they get through boom, 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 they get what they need and it's done. So that's another option as well too. So I hope you found these tips helpful. If you have your own different ways that you use to get unstuck when you're writing your book, I hope you share them in the comments so that others can see. And I'm always willing to learn new ways of how to get unstuck myself. So I would love for you to share those. And I look forward to seeing your comments and connecting with you more. And I will see you next week. Bye.